All right, recording. Well, thank you everyone for joining me today. My name is Jennifer Germano. I am from ICS Consulting Service here based out of Denver, Colorado. Like I was mentioning before, I hit the record button. I thought it would be a really good time to do a little educational webinar on preparing for licensing in a new emerging marketplace. I recently expanded it into the Missouri medical cannabis market this past month and had been working out there for about 2 months working on applications. And in the process, I just really learned a lot about the experience. And I just thought I would just kind of share some tips I learned along the way that I witnessed working with on multiple. I mean, I think I worked about 14 different license applications. It's a lot of different license applications. I do not do end to end. I just help people with sections. I like to I'm a stay in my lane kind of person. So I just help people with more of the operational aspect of their applications. And it just was an incredible experience and a little bit exhausting as well as joyful at the same time. So a little background about myself. I started working in dispensaries out here in Denver, Colorado back in 2009. And I operated medical dispensaries for about 6 years. And then we legalized recreational in 2012. It took from 2012 to 2014 for the first licensed facility to open in our state. That's a pretty normal process when we do from the point of writing the regulations, getting the work groups, getting the applications out, and then moving through the application process, approving the applications, and then the implementation dates actually open their facilities. So I took about 2 years here in Colorado, and on January 1st, 2014, I had the amazing opportunity and pleasure of opening a recreational dispensary, one out of 7 that were actually licensed in the entire state of Colorado. It was a very exciting time in my career, participated in that. And then 2014, I decided to get out of operating dispensaries and go into the consulting arena. And I have been building ICS consulting and working on it now for about almost 5 years. And I work nationally. I basically work in any state that anyone wants me to come work in. So I'll basically study your state's regulations if you plan on hiring me to come work in your state. And that's just how it goes. I don't really pick and choose. My clients pick me, and I go where my clients are. And so that's a little bit about my background, and let's go ahead and jump in. So one of the first things I learned when I was in Missouri, I actually was at a trade show, and I had a booth, and I presented on a panel and also a seminar I presented on compliance out there. And we were well in the middle of crunch time of applications in Missouri, and the amount of people that were starting the applications with only 2 weeks left, and the application process was actually pretty incredibly surprising that so many people were starting so late. And one of the things that I learned, not only from participating in that trade show in Missouri, but also working on applications literally for about 4 weeks straight, 7 days a week, working till midnight every night, not even remembering my name at the end of the day, was how important it was to stay true to your application. And this is something I've known that's gone on for a while, where maybe someone would bring someone like me with 10 years experience onto their cannabis application, but if they won or they were awarded the application, they would probably go and try to find someone local, or maybe someone that's more affordable or a little cheaper than me. And that actually happens a lot, where they might pay somebody for a really amazing security plan, but actually not implement that plan and go with a cheaper security company. That is something that actually happens a lot. But here is the deal. In Missouri, and I know this is actually, I think someone had told me Ohio and a couple other states, they actually wrote into the regulations and I'll do it in layman terms, that basically what you say on your application, you have to follow through and do, and we're going to actually check to make sure you do it. That's not regulatory talk, that's more layman talk, but basically they wrote into the regulations that whatever you put on your application, meaning the security plan, how your location, how you're going to be setting up your security cameras, if you're bringing me on as a consultant or putting me on the advisory board, all that is going on the application. And if you win your conditional license, which conditional means it can be taken away from you, it's on the condition that you actually do what you say you're going to do on the application. So Missouri, the Department of Health and Senior Services actually presented at the trade show I was at, and the director of compliance basically said, look, we're going to come into your facilities and check to make sure you're in compliance on your conditional license and make sure that you're doing everything you said you were going to do on your application. So that is why I believe it's very important to stay true to your application when you're working on any application. So anyone here that's working on an application, or if you're like me and you're consulting, please be sure to communicate to your clients how important it is to follow through on everything that you're going to do on your application. Because you do not know, even if it's not written, the regulations in your state, you have no idea if Michigan is going to come in and say, look, you said this on your application and we're not seeing that. We're not seeing that security plan. We're not seeing the 50 cameras that you said that you were going to put up and all these different security measures. You're not doing that, and we could potentially take away your conditional license. So that is why we stay true to our application. I just really thought it was important to bring up for anyone that's working on their application. Boy, this is something. I only laugh because, man, boy, did I learn about writing on these applications. For anyone who's worked on an application, all I did was write and write and write and write 12 hours a day, and write and write and write. And one of the things I was super grateful for, there were some teams I worked on, we didn't have technical writers. There were some people, more really smaller groups of people that I helped. Maybe maybe there was just one woman applying for a license, or maybe a married couple. I worked on all different levels of applications from people where we had 30 people on a team to just, maybe potential the one owner. So it just, everyone could only afford what they could afford. So my suggestion is put in your budget for a technical writer. I am not a technical writer. I can write content, and I'm lucky enough to have 10 years of experience, operational experience. So it's very easy for me to go on these applications and write true, what I know is true for how to run these operations. And I can write really well, and I'm a great content writer, but I highly recommend having a technical writer to come in and wave their magic wand and just add, some gold dust on top of everything that you've done to your application. Law firms use technical writers. Security companies that I work with use technical writers. I had two of the really large teams of 20 plus more people. They had a full-time technical writer on staff. In fact, one of the security companies out of Texas, I think they have 5 full-time technical writers for writing applications, and they win a lot of applications. And it's not necessarily, it's amazing to have somebody with 10 years experience and to have that compliance experience, but at the end of the day, it's the technical writing and the way it's being presented to the panel or the state or the city, whoever's scoring your application. So I highly suggest looking into hiring a technical writer. I think on one of my teams, just to give you an idea in case someone's wondering, well, Jenny, how much does that cost? On one of our teams, the woman she was charging $5,000 an application to write, or $5,000 for each project for writing multiple applications. So, obviously, if $5,000 is a lot of money, and to me, that's a lot of money. I know there's people out there that probably do technical writing for way less. So it's just a matter of doing research and just finding someone with a technical writing background, unless you have that skill set. But I highly recommend, and here's the thing, and maybe you don't use a technical writer for everything. Maybe you're amazing at doing business plans and, hired a company to do the security plan, but maybe there's specific things. Maybe you just hire a technical writer for, maybe 10 to 15% of the application. It doesn't have to be for the whole thing. It could just maybe be for the areas where maybe you're weak at, and you want to strengthen that part of the application. So definitely consider researching having a technical writer on your team. I know for me personally, I really enjoyed having the technical writer to come in and fix things, such as grammar, or just find better descriptive words, or maybe, hey, Jenny, you sounded repetitive. We can say it in this way. It was really helpful having a technical writer. And so definitely do your research on that. So like I mentioned, when I was recently in Missouri, I was out there probably 3 or 4 times. And I was at a trade show, and there were people. The trade show was probably about 2.5 weeks, pretty close to almost 3 weeks, but 2.5 weeks out from when applications were due in Missouri. And there were people that hadn't even started on the application, and were walking around trying to find someone to help them. And my suggestion is to be proactive and don't start late. I think that's a really, really important tip. I worked on a team, I think there was like 23 of us. They brought me on in the spring, like beginning of June, they started on this whole thing. So, they had a couple months to prepare, even though it was still stressful and people didn't sleep at night and everyone was up all night working. I felt like they were so much more farther ahead than the people who were starting with 2 weeks left. And I'm going to talk about it later in one of the slides, but starting late also affects getting locations, and that also depends on the state that you're in. So being proactive on your application is very important. So October 1st, the applications come out for Illinois. They're going recreational this January. It's very exciting. And I think they've been medical for about 4 years out there. So there are people who have been through the process. The recreational part will be new for them. And I just think you should start building your teams now. It is now September. I would be definitely researching companies, even though applications don't come out till October 1st. I would be looking diligently right now and vetting and doing my research and trying to put together a team, including finding an application writer, a lawyer, everything, getting everything ready for the anticipation of the release of the application. And that way, when the application is released, you might have a couple things you need to fix and move around, but you'll be pretty prepared, and you might have to add someone else to your team. But you'll have at least somewhat of a foundation to start on. And the applications, I think, are due in January. So that gives you a good amount of time to work on these applications. You don't want to start, in December working on these applications. I would think December would be one of the most stressful months to apply for a license, with just the holidays coming up and everything like that. I would definitely start on it like right now. Even though we don't know what the questions are going to be, you can still build a team. So one of the things that I learned, and this relates to, working in Colorado for 10 years and now moving into other states, and experience that I had in Maryland, and then moving into Missouri. And what I've learned along the way is that more and more states are requiring diversity on the application, and ensuring that you include your community, and that people of lower income or people of color can come onto these applications and actually have a fighting chance of getting approved. They're trying to make sure it's not all about everyone that has all these investors and all this money. There are people at all levels that want to participate in the licensing process and get awarded a license and give back to the community and do something for patients. There are a lot of people where it's not always about making a buck, and building this and flipping it and selling it in 5 years. There are people who really want to be in their community and provide these services for their community and in it for the long haul. And and there's all different types of people that apply for these applications. But I really am excited. I really applaud Missouri for all the diversity they had on the application, making sure that people of diverse backgrounds were included on this application, but also concerned about vets, people of low income, ensuring there was some type of sliding scale for patients to get access to their medicine. And when we talk about medical versus rec, I mean, it's really different, because when we get to the medical side, we are talking about patients and people who do need access. And for some people, this is their only medicine. They've come off prescription drugs, and this is what works for them as to someone who recreationally uses it. So it was very exciting to see how diverse. Some people weren't excited about the application being diverse, but it's just needed that we include everyone in the application process. The application was still set up to weed out anyone who would be obviously not responsible and being awarded a license. But so one of the things is when you're building your application, no matter what state you're in, just depends on what they require on the application, but be diverse, have women, have people from the LGBT community, have people of color, and have a diverse culture and cultural awareness training. That was one of the things on the Missouri application was, how are you going to train your employees for cultural awareness? And this is the time and the age that we're in that we have to provide these services for the people that we employ, and making sure that there's no discrimination going on in our businesses or anything like that. And we are leaving this open for everyone to participate in our industry, and it's not just one class of people that can be in this industry. So it's up to you. Do your research. On some of the applications, we brought in a woman who actually specialized in diversity. It's something I do not specialize in. I'm just like everyone else. I'm still learning. I come from an older generation, and I'm learning. I'm learning new ways, and so I basically had to hire someone to basically educate me and educate my clients on how to be diverse. Like I said, in Colorado, we haven't been very diverse here in our hiring processes, and our what type of people own what dispensaries. It's been pretty male dominant. Now we're seeing more women come on board. Now we're seeing more people of color coming on. So it's nice to see the landscape changing. But if this is a weakness for you on your application, you need to hire someone it's not a weakness for, and somebody who specializes in diversity to help you build a diverse application to turn into your state. And also include how you're going to give back to your community. Are your prices going to represent your community, or are they going to represent another community that you're not even in? And then how can the people in your community actually get access to that safe medicine and affordable medicine? So those are also things to think about. So I had to put this in here. This was really a wild ride. I would have to say I was really surprised. When I was in Missouri, there were people that hadn't even secured a location that we were working with that were trying to go after five or more license applications, and they were still looking for locations. We had people looking for locations literally 3 days before the applications were due. It was really intense and really just mind-blowing. And I think a lot of the applicants were taken back. I think people thought it would be easier to go and secure a location. Like, how hard can it be to go in and get a letter of intent, saying, and putting a deposit down on a property? But what happened to a lot of people that I worked with in Missouri was they had a real estate person. They went after things, but what happened was the actual people that were selling the properties or leasing the properties, when they found out they were applying for a cannabis application, they basically didn't want anything to do with them. And so this is a stigma that we're going to have to deal with in new emerging states, is that while we might be on board and all excited to create this new cannabis market in this new emerging state, there are going to be people that live in your state that are not for cannabis, whether it's medical or recreational, and they're worried about how it will affect their own lives and their business. So what happened was that people were finding locations either in a strip mall or just like a standalone building. The person selling it was concerned what people would think of them. That would they be able to sell the building after they ever left, that now that somebody had a dispensary in it, would it cause the value of the property to go down? In the case of the strip mall, this person was concerned that they wouldn't be able to rent out any of the other spaces, and nobody wanted to be next to a dispensary. And so this happened to multiple people that I knew, and I know every state is different, and we had the same issue in Colorado 10 years ago. And there was an issue where people didn't want to rent to somebody who was in the cannabis industry, or if they did, they quadrupled the price per square footage when they found out that it was cannabis as to something else that wasn't cannabis. And they basically tripled the price on the person for the rent. So one of the things is securing a location can be challenging, is what I basically learned in this process. And that the people that had the most luck were people who secured a location 3 months prior to the application being due, or they already owned the property. And obviously when you own a property, it's kind of exciting because you're the landlord, so your rent's not going to go up. But then you just have to worry about zoning and making sure that where your property is approved within that municipality for having a licensed facility. So you still have somewhat of an uphill battle. So if you're doing Illinois, and Illinois actually is not requiring a location, so it's going to be definitely not as stressful in Illinois like it was in Missouri. But depending on the state that you're in, securing a location can definitely be challenging. And at least what I saw from Missouri, it was extremely challenging. And it just was crazy and all over the place. And 1 minute you thought you were working for 5 locations, and all of a sudden it gets whittled down to 2 or 1. They're like, we just couldn't get it. We just couldn't get it in time. And that happened to a lot of people in Missouri. So I just thought that was really important to share. So legal advice. I 100% feel that everyone should have some type of lawyer helping them, specifically a lawyer that has experience with cannabis applications or understands cannabis compliance, but also understands how to set up a business legally, and have as far as your business plan and making sure all the right, that you're setting yourself up as a corporation or an LLC, making sure all that stuff is taken care of. Now, it just depends. Some people I met, the smaller groups, where maybe it was the married couple or the one person, they had their own personal lawyers that they were working with, and they did great. And then in the larger groups, we just had a lawyer that was part of our custom package. So we had, where I was on there, and maybe they had the lawyer, and then there was the application writer. We were just one big package that we would come in and take on all the applications together. So no matter what level that you're operating with for these license applications in your state, just make sure you have the proper legal advice that you're getting, and that they're reviewing your application for you. They're not going to be your application writers, but you definitely want a set of their eyes looking over the material to ensure that everything looks good and feels good and is presented in a really well. And so I highly recommend doing if your applications are coming out to October 1st, you can definitely start looking for a lawyer. And obviously, if you're going to have a lawyer helping you in your state, you need to find a lawyer that practices law in your state. You can't call up my friend Rachel here in Colorado now. She could help you with your application work, but she couldn't represent you as your lawyer because if she's not, if she hasn't passed the bar in that state, she can't work in that state as a lawyer. So those are just things to think about. There are a lot of cannabis lawyers out there. So, pardon me. So this is something that I always feel is important. I think I probably talk about this in a lot of my webinars, but you want to hire a vetted cannabis consultant with operational experience. And the reason I bring this up is because there are a lot of consultants out there who say they are experts and they're not. Working in a dispensary for a year in Colorado does not make you an expert. You're just basically an employee. It doesn't make you a cannabis expert. I did not think I was an expert. And in fact, I still have trouble when people call me an expert because for me, I'm always still learning. There's always things I'm trying to better and do better in my business. And I'm always working on my skills and my craft. There are things I'm not good at. There are things I'm great at. So I get uncomfortable when people call me an expert. And I have 10 years experience in this industry, regulated experience. So you want to make sure if you're hiring someone to help you in your application that, a year of experience, sure, they worked in a dispensary for a year, but it's not nearly the amount of knowledge that somebody might have that has worked 5 or 6 years or 10 years like myself. So you want to make sure, and you want to vet them. And what I mean by vet them is get references and do research on them and look at their social media and see how they handle themselves. I see people who are considered to be professionals that aren't handling themselves well on social media, and to me that's a red flag. Because if they're talking that way on social media, how are they talking? What are they saying when I'm not in the room as their client? And I want to work with people that have integrity. And so that's why you vet people, because you really do. You want to build the best team that you can, and don't let somebody who calls themselves an expert, don't believe they're an expert. Find out what makes them an expert. Why are they an expert? Just because they say they're an expert doesn't mean they're an expert. There's people who say they're experts all the time and they're not an expert. So I like to bring this up because I don't want people to be taken advantage of. I'm very protective of brand new people in this industry. I've seen so many people get mixed in with the wrong people or been, pardon my French, screwed over by consultants, which is disappointing because it gives consultants a bad name, and that's why I work extra hard to not ever be like that. So, and to just be extra protective of brand new people in the industry who have no idea what they're getting into. So be sure to do your vetting, ask for references, do research, but you want to make sure that you work with somebody who really truly has the experience. And it might cost you more. And I always say cheaper is not always better. Like, it might cost you more to get a more experienced consultant, but at the end of the day, I think it's worth it because it gives you a higher chance of accomplishing that goal that you're trying to reach by doing these applications. So for the application, I found it really interesting was when I was at this trade show, basically everyone at this trade show was applying. It was insane. Everyone's walking around just trying to find a POS system. They're just trying to find everyone they could at the trade show to get on this application. And what I would ask people is, have you read the regulations? So that most of the time it's emergency rules. Have you done all the application requirements? Have you used the application worksheets? And people are like, oh no, they haven't even done that step yet, and they're 2 weeks out from the application being due. That is really um, going to prohibit you from actually submitting a really good application, because when that application comes out, you should dive in right away. As soon as the emergency rules come out in your state, you should dive in right away. Do not rely on the consultant to know everything. And this is how I train my clients and train employees, but specifically clients who are starting out. I tell my clients, you should know everything. You may not be good at everything, and that's okay. And you might not fully understand everything, but learn how to use metric. Understand how our dispensary operation runs. If you can, try. This is like once your business starts and you get the application, you should learn all these things. So that way you can check in to make sure the people that you hired, your employees, your management team, that they're doing everything right. Because if you're an owner who doesn't understand the operation, how are you going to know that the people you're trusting to run your operation are doing it efficiently and in compliance if you don't understand? So, as an owner, your homework is to try to understand as much as you can. I'm not requesting that you be an expert at it, but it's really important for you to know if someone's taking advantage of you. This will help eliminate people trying to take advantage of you if you just put all your trust in them and don't learn it yourself. So I feel the same way about that when it comes to applications, regulations. Read as much as you can. For the most part, everyone that I meet, that are bootstrapping this whole thing by themselves and they don't have a big team, they're reading everything. They're reading every single page. So I did just meet some people in Missouri who weren't, which was a little surprising to me. I think some people actually fled the building because they realized that they were in way over their head and that it just wasn't going to get done. And I think that's the purpose of the application, is to weed people out that wouldn't be able to do a good job. So one of the things that I went too far. So another thing I wanted to talk about was, so you go through this entire application process, and let's just say you actually do win the conditional license or the license in your state. I want to make sure that people understand that if you think the application process was hard, it gets harder. And I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. And this is what I try to help people with in Missouri, is that the journey is not over once you submit the application. You submit the application, then you bite your fingernails off for the next 6 months waiting to find out if you win the license. But then you're still trying to prepare that you're going to win the license, because if you do win the license, you want to be able to go and jump right in and start. I just want people to, I don't want people to have rose-colored glasses on what's ahead of them. There's a lot of hard work ahead, and that the license application process is just one phase of this business. And there's many different phases. There's the application process, which includes finding a location, getting everything done in the application, putting together your team. But then you have your build out process, and then you have your contractor that's going to come in. And typically it doesn't ever go smoothly with a contractor. If anyone's ever worked with contractors, things happen, and there's bumps in the road, and there's things that are out of our control and out of the contractor's control as well. Like, for example, I had a client building a dispensary, and I was supposed to come in and do all the operational training. Kept getting pushed back month after month. It took almost 3 months later before I got into the facility to actually do the training. The reason why it was the contractor. It wasn't the contractor's fault. We had a lot of snow. They couldn't get on the roof. There were things they couldn't do at the building because of all the snow on the roof, which was delaying the cameras, it was delaying so many different things. So weather can play an aspect. Weather can definitely affect a build out process. Something can get stuck in customs that you ordered that maybe that was coming from overseas? What if you ordered an extraction, a piece of extraction equipment that was coming from Thailand? I'm just making up a country, but like, anyways, what if something's coming in from another country and it gets stuck in customs for months? I know it happens. So these are the things to think about, that it's not, you might have it down on paper, I'm going to do this and this, it's going to happen in this order, and it's going to happen just the way I have it in my business plan, but it's just not true. It just, that is you being proactive. Here are the things we would like to happen, but the thing is, life is life and things happen, and there are things that are out of our control that we cannot control as humans, which will then set us back a little bit. So I just want to be everyone to be prepared for what is ahead of you, and that it doesn't just end with the application. It then goes to the build out, and then you have to hire a team for your operations. You just hired a team for the application. Now you have to hire somebody to help you with your operations, make sure that you open your facility in compliance, and maybe you have to find a grower, an extractor. Then you have to get all the equipment and the lights and the tables and where are you going to get the plants and the clones and the seeds, and what about your labeling and packaging and marketing and branding? There's so much to do. You haven't even opened your doors yet. So, and then once you open your doors, I always say it's the day after opening day. Opening day is exciting, but the day after opening day, so now all the stuff that you just dumped $500,000 into in the last 2 years of your life, sweating your butt off to get there, you now have to maintain it all. You have to maintain the compliance. You have to still keep putting money in. You have to pay for renewal fees. You're going to have to pay for compliance. You're going to have to pay for employees. You might have employee retention problems. You're going to have to continue employee training. You're going to grow and expand. You might have to bring an HR person on. So it keeps going and growing, and it still needs attention. It still needs to be engaged in. It's not just, let's just build it and they will come. Yeah, they'll come, but they won't come if you don't maintain it. So, and that I know true because I've run enough facilities in the last 10 years to see what happens when people don't maintain the facility. So I just kind of wanted to be honest and prepare people for what is beyond the licensing application. And if you don't win, don't feel bad either. I mean, look, Missouri had 2,100 people apply. I feel like that's like a 10% chance for most people to win an application. You don't know how many people are going to apply. The mad rush to get applications in depends on the state you're in. Will they release another set of applications? Are they going to cap it off at that? Every state is different. I think in Colorado, we're almost at like over 3,000 licenses. We're saturated. We're not nearly as saturated as Oregon and Denver. You can't even get a new license in Denver. We're on a cap for sure. And you can only buy existing licenses in some places. But there's just a lot of things to think about and to work on when you're stepping into this application. I think it's important that everybody understands what they're actually getting involved in. I think people get excited and think, oh, I'm going to go open a dispensary, but they have no idea what the road even looks like. So I'm doing my best to educate people and to help them see what the road looks like, to make sure this is really what you want to do and fully commit to what you want to do. Because for me, investing $500,000, $10,000, 20, 50, whatever level you're investing, that's a lot of money. That's money out of my retirement. That's money out of what I might have been using to buy a house. That could be an inheritance that you're using. So to me, I think it's really important to let people know the risk that they're taking. And obviously, when you're an entrepreneur and you're a business owner, take risks. If you weren't, then you would still be an employee, and you would be taking risks in a different way as an employee. So I just wanted to thank you. I'm going to take questions. I'm just going to stop recording, but then I'll take questions. But I really appreciate everyone who showed up today. I hope some of these tips were helpful. Wasn't my normal full hour presentation. It was a little shorter, but it was just because it was license application. And I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. I can figure that out.